this as a roll? Oh, God.
We don't get to the wall. What Randy said is don't torque it to the point that it starts. On a wall, we used to have to run. Now we're too old.
Yeah. That's it.
How'd you guys get good?
Thank you.
As long as it's the original building 50 years ago.
That's the original one.
You've got information for me on the shop itself?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Make sure you introduce yourself.
I know you're all teenagers that are here, and you know, we started this project, Santa Cruz Surfing Club Preservation Society, to try and preserve some of the history of surfing in Santa Cruz. And one of the things that was near and dear to all of us were the surf shops where we hung out, where the older guys told us what was what, and then adjusted our attitude in the water. And these places were meccas. So what we're doing is identifying the old surf shops, working with the Museum of Art and History, working with the owners of buildings, and installing these blue plaques that make them historical designations. And so that's what this is about. We've done, you want to tell the ones that we've done already?
Yeah, this is Don Iglesias, for those folks that don't know Don. My name's Kim Stoner. We're both board members of the Santa Cruz Surfing Club Preservation Society. He gave you a summary. We also operate the Surf Museum in conjunction with the city of Santa Cruz. And Don and I are the heads of this committee. We've plaqued 6 old surf shops to date, right? Well, we've plaqued 5 out of 6. Hout, Olson, Yount, Schofield, Surf's Up, Portola, and Freeline. Hey, John. Glad you're here.
Yeah, and again, the criteria, the building has to still be standing. So if a place like Winterburn down the street gone, if the building's gone, then we can't plaque it. John's first place was blown out wetsuits down the street. That was a home of Freeline Design in 1969. So we're now we could go to 71. So, you know, we're aware of most of the shops, but if we're missing somebody and you've got information, tell one of us, and you know, we'll make sure that it's under consideration. What we want to do is do about, you know, 9 to a dozen plaques, and then we're working with the museum. There'll be a 3-fold, and there'll be a spot map of all dozen or whatever it is where the surf shops were, with a little summary of whatever we can remember of history with all these fuzzy brains. So that's the plan.
Right.
Let's start out.
Okay, so I want to welcome you all here today. This location is kind of unique in the fact that it was Schofield originally, and later became Surf's Up, and then Portola Surf Shop. Whereas most of the locations we've done so far have just been one entity.
And
So-
some of the people that hung out here are in the crowd, and you know who you are. We may not know. Certainly, we're going to turn it over to somebody who spent a lot of time here.
We're going to turn over to Barney Boy.
Roland Baker worked for, I don't know, for
Surf's Up, I don't know, 65, 66. $5 a day.
I think they did. Bob Person worked here. He was paid in decal, so he has a great stash, although
I was
never
hired.
get one up.
Have a great day.
So Barney,
You want to introduce Barney just first?
come on up, Barney. For those of you that don't know, this is Barney Langer. He's also a member of our nonprofit, the Preservation Society, and he was a former owner of Portola.
And Surf's Up, but
And
we'll get
Surf's
to
Up.
that in a second.
So I'm going to step back, and it's all yours, Barney.
First of all, I want to thank God for the great weather we have today, and thank God for all of us that are here. Because we've lost a lot of friends, and John, my heart goes out to you. Your wife, Kim, second to none. You know, she's right here today with all of us, and we're not done with her. I'm just telling you. She was a fabulous woman. She'll always be a fabulous woman, and we need to recognize that in the community. So the reason for the plaque came about because of Joe Vigil. But I'm going to step back for a second and talk about Steve Schofield. I happened to be down here looking for a board for a friend. I lived in Hayward, part of the what was it? Swim Club, Southgate Swim Club. guy was working, and I don't know who the hell he was, but I just jokingly said, you know, are you hiring? He said, you come back in summer and I'll hire you. So 2 months later, I come back here, I walk in, and it's the same guy here, and I said, well, I'm here, and he hired me. So all of a sudden, I'm working in a surf shop that's owned by this guy, and I'm working for him. Well, something happened between him and his partner, Joe Vigil, and the next thing I know, I'm working for Joe Vigil because this fella's gone. And a year later, I became Joe's partner, and then a year later, I bought him out and I changed Surfs Up to Portola Surf Shop. But when Joe passed, I had to remember Joe, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today. But then, in hindsight, I find out years later that the guy that hired me is your father, Steve Schofield. And it's only about 10 or so years ago that I actually started studying your father and who the heck this guy was that hired me. This guy right here, Steve Schofield. Think about that. I had no idea who he was. And we were together just during that first summer, but there's two things that stood out in my life about being with Steve. And that was drinking at Brady's Yacht Club, which still happens on occasion today.
It needs a plaque.
And eating at Tampico Kitchen downtown. That's where I discovered Mexican food. And it's still in my veins. I miss that place terribly on Pacific Avenue. So, who's missing on this right now today is Steve Schofield. So I'm going to have to find a place for him at some point, Eric, and I'll let you know. Because if it wasn't for Steve, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for Joe Vigil, who was the inspiration for this, and how it came about is I'm a quarter Irish, and so the Irish tend to celebrate those people that we've lost. And I said, you know what? I'm going to come up with this idea for a pub crawl every year on the 17th, and I'm going to go drinking on the 17th and remember these people we lost. So the first one that got on here was Joe, because he inspired me in 1992 to do this. And there's a couple other people on here, unfortunately, that mean a lot to me. Tom Noble, his brother's Pete Noble. Well, I went to junior high with Pete. I ended up playing rugby against Pete, and I kept that surfing connection. I mean, I met him so many different times, but I met him again when I was in the surf shop, and all of a sudden he's down here from the Bay Area surfing, and I'm going, I just saw you over here. I saw you over here. Now I'm seeing you in the water. So I go back a long way with Pete Noble, and his brother actually worked for me when I had a store up in Jack London Square. Another person you'll remember is Michael A. Locatelli. I have my group of kids from Steve Wiles, who unfortunately is not here today, but Steve, I think, was one of the first people that really made us a shop, because he knew everybody. Yeah, well, the Hayward guy was over here surfing Fish Point. So it really sort of put us on the map in a sense. So Steve Wiles, and then I can't say enough about my first crew of, give me a second here, my first crew of Hanson and Brown were a team. And then I had Hewitt and Locatelli. They were a team. I'm telling you, I had, John, no offense, I had one of the best crews in this town. So shout out to my boys. And I'm sorry that Nancy Locatelli's not here today. I reached out to her, and I wish she was here, but obviously something came up. And then I do want to say something about my Groms. You've got Jack here today. You've got, and the people that made the shop, you got Lee, and you've got Jim Wales, and all you other guys that are here. Good morning, how are you? Oh yeah, you're right. Larry Boothman. Now I want to get to some people that also made us important. Pat's coming. Pat's coming. Well, actually, he's under the Friends of Portola. Huge friend. So Pat Farley. Tell him quickly what you told me the other day. It was absolutely hilarious. I had forgotten all about it.
It was the only two surf shops I could go in, John's and his, and I could pull a board off the rack and leave without having to pay for it. I traded sandals.
Trading sandals, that's
Yeah.
So there was sounds like Pat owes you money.
Yeah, so yeah, I could pull a board off Barney's rack, and worst part was I pulled the board off his rack. It was a nice Coletta. Took it out to the harbor. Third wave I got, it broke in half, and I had to pay for it.
There's Miles showed up.
Hey, Miles, get over here. This fella right here was so important to this shop. I don't know how I stumbled into asking you to work here.
Me either. I don't know. Anchorage.
Yeah, I might have been Anchorage. Might have been when
We
were
lived on Anchorage together.
together for a while. And when he came in, it really set the dynamic that I could sort of step back and manage, and he could run the shop, and that's put us together as a team that allowed me to. It made it easier for me when he left and broke my heart. But then I was able to get the kids in and to replace him. But Steve, in some ways, is irreplaceable. I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about Westcliff. Westcliff was terribly important to this shop. Chuck Stralens, he's in London right now and couldn't be here today, but my idea is to have a party in June, and we can talk about it. We can talk about everything then, and that'll give me some time to put together the history a little bit more thorough. And but I want to say something about Chuck and his crew. You've got Ovo. You've got Michelle Junot. I mean, who doesn't know about Michelle? And you had Steve Coletta. I mean, I actually went to Chuck and asked him to give me a list of some of the shapers that shaped out of here. And you got Michelle and Joy Thomas and Mike Berteau and Chuck Vincent and Steve Coletta and Court Guyon, Dave Sweet. You got Locatelli. You got Bob Chatfield and Randy French. They were collaborating at one time. Chuck Vincent, Doug Schrodel, and if I'm missing somebody, I have Dave Sweet. Supposedly he had boards. Oh, Micah's. No, he actually came down here. He put together a list of glassers, shapers, everything. So it's something. But I was asked not to hand this out. So at some point, when he gets back, I'm going to firm it up so that we can actually publish it. Moving on, I want to say something about, and I'm going to bring you up in a second, Cindy, something about the next group that replaced me, because I sold the shop to Michael in '82. And that's when Mike took over, and Cindy and their crew. So maybe I have Cindy say a few words about that, because Portola is two groups. This isn't just about me. This is about us as a team that carried on the legacy. And Mike Locatelli and Cindy and your crew was terribly important to what we did. But I also want to single out, besides Chuck and his team, I want to single out NHS. Those of you that know. Those of you that don't, NHS stands for Novak Houghton Sherman. And when I was introduced to them and I was able to get my materials from them, it really was a dynamic move for us at the shop. Because then we got into selling materials, which allowed guys to come in and buy blanks, buy resin, buy fiberglass, buy everything they needed in order to build their boards. And that was huge. And to go down to 41st the old surf shop, Santa Cruz Surf Shop, and hang out with Novak and Jay Sherman. I don't know how many people remember Jay Sherman. What a guy. What a guy.
What year was that when you passed away? It was early 70s.
You know what? I've got to look it up, and I don't know. But losing Jay Sherman was really a sad day. He was.
How old was he?
I honestly don't remember, but I'll research that. But I do want to thank NHS today, Novak, Houghton, Sherman, and I also want to thank some of our suppliers like Greg Garrett. You know, he came in here and brought apparel. You know, we started dealing with apparel. Keep in mind, back in the day, surf shops weren't as sophisticated as they are today. I mean, surf shops were really about somebody shapes the board and they sell the board. I think that's what you were about initially, right, John? You know, we evolved. We evolved as we saw that we could sell other things and we could do other things that were important to the community. So this was not. We were in the infancy of a industry that we see today that has grown substantially. I mean, it's $1 billion industry. Heck, if we made $100,000 a year, I think we were happy. But if we stayed in Santa Cruz, I think we were even happier. So I do want to remember Greg. He was my OP rep, my gotcha rep, and today he's very successful with a company called Z Supply. You look them up, they're huge. And then I want to, before I bring Cindy in, I want to mention Kelly Sorensen from On the Beach. Kelly partnered with Mike, and Mike ended up partnering with Kelly, as I remember, not on the beach, but in a surf shop in Salinas.
Yeah, there's on the beach too. On the beach in Salinas, yeah.
Mike and I guess for whatever reason they decided to close that. But Cindy, why don't you come up here for a second and talk about your crew? I know Elfin. Those of you that remember Elfin or know Elfin, he's now working down at O'Neill Surf Shop and has been there forever.
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
And so talk about quickly your group, because when I sold it to Michael in '82, this fabulous genius helped Michael make it what it was, or keep it what it was.
I'm not prepared for this at all, by the way. It's kind of funny. Joe Vigil is my stepdad too, so it was interesting, kind of how it went 360 around. So it was kind of fun. And Barney's been in our lives for a long time, and so wherever I go, I try to bring my brother in because he's awesome. So Jeff and Spill and Rod and Huey, awesome people. Pat was always around. You know, Chuck Strelitz was always around. It was a really fun time. Jack, and trying to pull everything in and make it a surf shop and make it local and friendly. That was our big thing. We always tried to push people off if we didn't have something off to Freeline or to Santa Cruz Surf Shop. Really to try to keep that friendly thing going on. Mike was awesome. Loved him like crazy. We had some great times here, and it was a great group of people and super important to my heart. And I'll forever be grateful for the times that we got to spend here.
And I will say something about, and she touched on it, the relationship between surf shops back in the day. You know, if we didn't have something, we sent them down to our competition. But you know what? I don't think that we really thought of each other's competition, especially with John and
Especially
Freeline.
John and Freeline.
We just thought it was part of our responsibility to take care of our customer. And if we couldn't take care of the customer, we were hopeful that John or another shop could take care of that customer. So we thought nothing about sending business down to them. And that's the camaraderie that we experienced back in the day that I don't know if it's lost, but I don't think that it's felt.
Yeah. And I think everybody was a part of everything. I mean, we did everything from our own graphics, and like the logo with a dot is literally my handwriting that you see on the surfboards. It was just a good group of people that were really involved and are still involved in town in an awesome way.
And lastly for me, The real change in my life that took place is because somebody special came into my life, and that's my wife, Denise. That's right. My
Yeah,
wife,
Denise.
Is it true? She was a cocktail waitress at the time up in. And there's stories behind that, trust me. But she was gorgeous. She's still gorgeous, and she settled me down. And we've been together for 30-something years now. Yeah. Somebody had to do it, and I'm so grateful it's this woman, my wife Denise. So thank you, wife. And she also gave me a ride here today, so I'm thankful for that as well. And I'll sort of end by mentioning that we want to do something during the summer, so we're going to have some time to plan. As I recall, the surf shop business started in June. It was almost like you could look at the calendar, you could see when kids are going to be out of school, and you knew you better be ready to have your store stocked. And all of a sudden, it would just turn on, and we'd have customers, and we'd start making money. And so sometime in June of next year, in conjunction with you two, we're talking about maybe doing a sort of pub crawl. You know, where we go from shop to shop, from plaque to plaque, and have sort of a party, a celebration, where we're with John's crew and we're with my crew, and we just recognize all of us as being part of the history of this town, important history. So thank you so much for being here today. If I've left anybody out, I truly apologize. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Can I add just a quick paragraph? Before Portola came here, there was a guy by the name of Fred Stevens that was running the Surf Sub shop. His brother-in-law was Otto. Fred lived over the hill. When he retired, Otto said, "Hey, I'm killing it here with the rental thing." So Fred came over here, started renting wetsuits, not boogie boards, but you remember the little Dextra body boards they had, selling Dextras. And I worked for him for 2 years, you know, riding my bike out here, $5 a day, and it was great. But Fred, halfway through his tenure here, decided to start making boards. And he found a guy that, according to what he said, had shaped at O'Neill's. I don't know if it's true or not. His name was Bill Gruckel. And Bill came in and shaped what's called the Gruckel-Stevens boards. They probably produced less than 100 of them in around 66, 67. And Don has one. There's another one that we found that a guy brought the Woodies on the Wharf one year, and prime condition. So these things were, kind of right at the end of stock board. They had pretty panels, the colors, but it's a really rare board that was in production in Santa Cruz for probably a short amount of time. Bill Gruckel is still living here. He's a welder and a machinist. I called him about coming today, and he had to work, and he's older than I am, so poor guy's still working at it. But anyway, it's kind of a neat piece of history, just how it went from a rental shop to a real on surf shop.
And I guess the other thing I was remiss in saying is I want to really thank Kane for allowing us to take up his parking lot for this morning. He gave us the permission. He understood how important this was. So, Boots, hey Boots. So we've gone from Portola to what now?
Pontola? Or Portoca? Portoca.
Well, Boots is so good.
It came to me in a cloud.
Barney said, there's another one. He said Vapola.
What?
Vapola.
Vapola. There you go. I'll take Vapola too. Anyway, thanks again. And
Group shot.
oh yeah, we got to do group shot. And just know that I'm going to get everybody together come summertime with John and a few others, and we're going to organize this pub crawl. Yeah. Well, we can't call it pub crawl.
No, we can't. We'll come up with a name.
We'll come up with a name. We'll have.
We'll advertise it all.
We'll advertise it, and it's going to be fun.
Holy cow.
Hey, smile, guys.
John, get over here.